This is Free Speech TV joining you from Netroots Nation 2025 in New Orleans. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, and I'll be bringing you conversations with changemakers and activists attending the largest progressive political conference in the nation. Joining me now is Adela de la Torre, Deputy Director at Justice Action Center. Welcome, Adela.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And for full disclosure to our audience, I am a board member of Justice Action Center, but I do feel that everybody should know about the good work that you guys are doing, because not only is it focused on immigration, which is such a huge topic these days, but you are winning cases. And this is something that I think not enough people are seeing in our audiences. First of all, let's start with the generalities. When we think about the blatant rule-breaking, law-breaking that the Trump administration is engaging in, they're saying it's about law and order because immigrants break the law, but they're breaking laws left, right, and center. How dire a moment are we in terms of the lawlessness around the Constitution and respecting human rights today?
I think the moment that we're in really is illustrative of what many of us in the immigrants' rights movement have long known, that the Trump administration cannot enact its mass deportation fantasy without breaking the law and without delegalizing millions of people in the process.
So they're taking people who are here with papers, taking away their rights, and then saying, now you're illegal, quote unquote.
That's right. We've heard time and time again, oh, if only people would do it the right way. One of the things that we have seen, especially with humanitarian parole, you're talking about 1.1 million, potentially, Ukrainians, folks from Afghanistan, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, who stood in line, who waited their turn, who had an interview, who had a US-based sponsor in many cases, and who got permission to be in the United States. And then with the snap of fingers, not only did the Trump administration say that they, all of a sudden, undocumented, but also that they wanted to deport them without due process.
So let's talk about humanitarian parole. Is that the same thing as temporary protective status, TPS?
It is not. They are both forms of documentation. They are both things that can provide work authorization. Temporary protected status, as you know, is something that that an administration can provide to countries, to people from countries after, say, a natural disaster.
Right.
Humanitarian parole is a very different tool. Humanitarian parole, again, is something that an administration can do, but it says, we recognize that there is a significant humanitarian reason for us to welcome, for example, people from Afghanistan who aided the United States military because they are in danger. Or, with the example of Ukraine, people fleeing the Russian invasion. Those people applied to come here, they often have a US-based sponsor, someone in the United States who has said, I will be financially responsible for this person when they come to the United States. So they are similar in the sense that they provide documentation, but the processes are different.
So what has Justice Action Center done to counter these attacks? Tell us about some of the wins.
Yeah. So the Justice Action Center has been working on humanitarian parole for quite some time. The Trump administration, on day one, announced that categorical humanitarian parole was unlawful, which we all know is not true. Humanitarian parole has been around for 70 years and has proceeded to try to delegalize people. The first attack was on Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. But the other thing they did, and this was very, it was pernicious. They said anyone who is here on humanitarian parole who has another pathway to lawful status, so say you are here and you meet the love of your life, you get married, that process to get a different visa, they put it on pause. And so we went to court, and on that pause piece, we won. Theoretically, the Trump administration should be, I keep dropping this. Theoretically, the Trump administration should be now processing these people whose lives are on hold. I know, for example, one person, we'll call him Bernardo, He's a Cuban. He came here on humanitarian parole. He has another pathway to legal status via the Cuban Adjustment Act. He works with autistic kids. The Trump administration cut off his humanitarian parole and has not processed a pathway that should be his. And therefore he's had to leave his job working as a therapist for autistic kids.
So the United States relies on so many immigrants filling crucial jobs, and this is something that also doesn't get to be part of the standard narrative around immigration, right? It's all about how immigrants are desperate to come in here and steal our jobs. And actually, it turns out we need immigrants more than they need us, because things like working with autistic kids or home healthcare workers or physicians and so many different skilled jobs that we don't have enough people in the United States to fill are filled by immigrants who come to the U.S. on such things as humanitarian parole or temporary protected status, because they're often skilled people, and the Trump administration is basically pushing them out.
That's exactly right. One of the things that we've heard from all sectors of society. I think one thing that people don't realize is people hear, oh, mass deportation, maybe they like the fantasy of it, especially some of our friends who are a little farther on the right. But then when it's their child care provider, their nurse, their physician, their friend, the person who sits next to them at church, then they realize, oh, this is not what we asked for. This is not what we need. I think one of the things that we've known for a long time is immigrants are scapegoated. But when we just take a minute to sit with the reality of it, we realize immigrants are part of our communities and have been for a long time.
Adela, we've done there's been a lot of coverage around how immigrant communities are protecting themselves, rising up to do sort of self-defense work, because there's no recourse, right? It's not like normally when masked men come and kidnap your family member, you would call, say, 911. You can't do that. There's no recourse here. So people are rising up to defend themselves. However, the piece that may not be getting as much attention is that in conjunction with that street activism, on the ground self-defense work, is the silent work of lawyers that goes on, in over computers, online, on paper. How critical is that as an accompaniment, a complement to street activism and organizing in order to claw back rights? Given that, even when there are wins, such as the recent ruling prohibiting ICE from indiscriminately arresting immigrants based on racial profiling, the Trump administration flouts those rulings and says, we're going to do it anyway. I mean, so legal pushback is important, and yet we have an administration that doesn't respect legal rulings.
I think that's why for us, we have a saying at Justice Action Center, it's no lawyers in capes, because no one strategy is going to win the day. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take the organizers. It's going to take the narrative experts like you. It's going to take the lawyers to work in tandem to make sure that we are protecting people's constitutional and statutory rights, that we are alerting people to what those rights are, and that we are telling different stories about welcome and belonging, because one thing we do know is that when public support is on our side, we have a much better chance of winning.
Does that impact even judiciaries, for example, when we have, they're supposed to just be interpreting the law all the way up to the Supreme Court? We know that's not true, but does public opinion guide our judiciaries not just to rule on the side of human rights, but to just even do simple things like back the Constitution?
So what I would say, I'm not a lawyer, as you know. That's my counterpart, Karen Temlin. But I think one of the things that we have seen is that public opinion is a really powerful tool, whether it's in the courts themselves or in the halls of Congress. Eventually what we are going to need is to make sure that the people who are sitting in power in Washington understand what the vast majority of us actually want and don't get swayed by the politics of fear. And the truth is, whether they're judges or members of Congress or organizers, we're all people, right? And we all get we all get influenced by what is in the ecosystem, and so we all need to make sure that we are telling the stories of the society we want to have.
And you told us the story of the Cuban person who was impacted. Storytelling is also such an important aspect of this work. Do you feel that enough of that is happening, given that our mass media is also in many ways broken? We've had a recent defunding of public media. Independent journalists are always struggling for cash, I should know. And mass media like the New York Times, the CNNs, the MSNBCs, they do some storytelling, but often it feels so flawed, so reductive, and they tend to adhere to the politics of respectability as opposed to simply, human rights.
You know what I've found interesting is that one of the stories that I think doesn't get told as often is that of the welcomers. And I think it's because it doesn't fit within a dominant media narrative. A lot of our welcomers are kind of conservative.
What do you mean by welcomers?
These are the people who have said, I would like to sponsor somebody from Venezuela, somebody from Haiti, somebody from Cuba. They show their bank accounts to the federal government. They say that they will be responsible for these people for 2 years. And one of the things that because I've talked to many of these people, they don't fit within a box. And I think that's part of why sometimes they are very conservative Christians who view this as not an immigration issue, but a religious issue. Welcoming the stranger is their freedom of religion. That doesn't fit within that kind of pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant box, and so that story doesn't get told as often.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think we've heard that very much. And so there are people who do sponsor and welcome them. Have you heard from them as humanitarian parole, is being threatened? What are people who sponsor these immigrants? What are they saying?
In fact, we have heard from people who voted for Trump in November, who were sponsors. And one of the things that I attributed to it is that they didn't really, when they were told to be afraid of the bad hombres, and they believed that, but they didn't realize that the bad hombres that the Trump administration was talking about were the people that they welcomed into their homes and lives. It's heartbreaking. And
the rest of us knew it, but I guess
we did.
Yeah,
we did.
Selective listening.
Yeah, and honestly, right now, we're welcoming those people because they're an important part of fighting back.
Adela, give out a website or other ways for people to reach out to find out about Justice Action Center's work.
Absolutely. So you can follow us on Instagram, Justice Action Center. Our website is www.justiceactioncenter.org. We're on there. You can get all kinds of updates about our cases and stories and clients.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My guest has been Adela de la Torre. She is Deputy Director for Justice Action Center. I'm Sonali Kolhatkar, host of Rising Up with Sonali, reporting for Free Speech TV from the Netroots Nation 2025 conference in New Orleans.